Alright, should be live. So I do have to do a little tiny bit of whatever you call it. Yeah, so a little bit of that, whatever you call it. What the hell is it? So these videos really, there's no point in making arguments on the internet, apparently. And you really do have to find somebody else to interact with. Arguments on the internet. So if there isn't somebody with a physics degree, okay, or some sort of credibility in terms of making physics arguments, which is to challenge the stuff I'm saying, I'll pay you, for your participation. So just email me with your requirements or demands, and you have to be willing to do this, interacting thing directly, where I can interrogate you on your confidence in these silly theories of standard physics. And anyway, it is irritating because there's no dissidents that aren't talking shit. That's the truth. I mean, I wish there was some evidence that people were making good physics arguments against standard physics, but no, a lot of the arguments are just wooey garbage. I concede the point, but like I said, I'm willing to pay you, okay, to counter my arguments, all right, and not just pretend they're baseless, okay, because I've demonstrated them over and over again not to be baseless. They're perfectly reasonable arguments that should, it shouldn't be asking too much to get a counter argument from some source. And the more credible that source, the better, right? Obviously, it'd be nice to be able to get people who spout a lot of crap like Veritasium. And we do it all in, their sheltered environment. I mean, you don't even see those people willing to engage in any kind of participatory kind of physics discussions. Because, I think their arguments are really incredible and silly. So anyway, this one we're going to deal with gravity, just to do a little bit of a change of subject. So we're not always doing the same thing. So the idea is, that we know something for a fact. I place something in space that has no momentum, no energy, no motion, and it will be caused to move. So we know that we're creating momentum. Okay, you're giving something an mv. Mass is now given a velocity by this thing called gravity, this bent space. So you are injecting into the universe motion. So even if it already has a pre-existing motion, we know we're going to add to its motion. We're not going to subtract from it. Okay, gravity is going to add to its motion. So it's always creating a plus energy. There's a plus invention of motion in the universe. So unlike the Descartesian theory that energy moves through the universe and just gets exchanged, that is, it just moves into some object, it gets dissipated as heat, or it gets dissipated as something else flying off. It always just has to go somewhere. So you take a pile of sand, for example, and you hit it with something, okay, it will displace, okay, the sand, and the same MV will be conserved, and those pieces of sand will in turn cause motions, and all those motions will equal what you started with. So the MV in will equal the MV out, and the out never stops. So it ends up being a radiator of photons, infrared radiation. So even that everything stops. I have something, I cause an action, a car crash, I bend fenders, I do a lot of crushing. I didn't use the energy. It's still there, it's still moving. And it just gets dissipated as a bunch of heat, and it moves the atmosphere and different things happen, but it didn't stop moving, and it's still going somewhere right now. So a car crash 10 years ago the energy from that crash is still floating through the environment somewhere. It never is destroyed. So that's the simple principle of the conservation of energy. It's really the conservation of momentum. Momentum is the core function. So you could argue when Professor Lowen says nature can deal with kinetic energy one way or the other, but nature can't finagle momentum. That's the idea, the principle. And it's completely in conflict with their other notions of energy. So we won't bother saying that this thing has kinetic energy. We're just going to talk about the fact that it's a mass now moving, and the motion was caused by whatever we're going to call gravity. So whatever you're going to say gravity is, okay, the fact is it creates plus energy. It creates energy. And the simple Descartesian argument is, well, where does the energy go? So when they teach it, relativity, when Leonard Susskind teaches it, he's actually even drawn a waterfall, okay, as the source, and a drain, okay, as the exit point, implying that there's some place where the drain goes back into the reservoir to continue this process. But it's just implied because he can't state it as a fact because there's no mechanism. Bent space doesn't provide a mechanism to consume energy or to produce it, for that matter, because there's no mechanism, there's no force. So the simple argument is you really have to have some kind of physical force that gives things their momentum. Now the simple argument again is this is all about the R squared rule, all right, the inverse square law. And that law just has to do with the fact that some force spreads in both dimensions, and that is also goes for the reverse. So if you do have a pressure on the outside of the universe, all right, so you have a constant application of force. Can't see that. I'll put it here. Yeah, constant application of force. That it would be the inverse square law. That it would be obeying the same law. Basically, the pressure gets weaker and gets stronger and stronger the closer it gets because it's funneling right into the center, so to speak. And all the tangential pressure, something going this way is compensated by something going that way, so it doesn't really matter about the center part. It's just that the center becomes a focus. And so you have this external pressure, and then you can understand that, yes, something's falling in gravity. It's going to be exposed to it like as if it was paint spray. So I can use paint spray as an analogy because it, generally speaking, sprays out in the inverse square law manner. Can't see that either. Yeah. All right. So paint spray redone. Okay. So it's the inverse square law again. Probably should get rid of that pervertiverse, but it is important to emphasize. And so basically the idea is that, yes, depending on how close you are to the sprayer, you're going to get hit by more paint, and further away, less paint. And time, the amount of time you spend in the paint is going to be critical to how much the paint gets on you. And the same is true for gravity. It behaves exactly as if there was a spray of water or paint or something. That's why they teach it. They use mock gravity. This is basically a description of mock gravity, a physical mechanism obeying the inverse square law and pushing objects, essentially. And that's the simple mechanism, that depending on how the slower you're going, the more quickly you'll be bent into the earth, let's say, and the faster you're going, the less you'll be bent, and in some cases you won't be bent significantly and just travel right through the gravity. So it's basically a thin ice argument also. You travel quickly over thin ice, and the faster you travel, the less weight per square inch is applied to the ice, and it's less likely to fracture because you've applied less force. So you collect the force in units of time, and Newton gave you the simple formula, 9.8 meters per 1 second. That's what you're getting. Per every 1 second, you get 9.8 meters per second of velocity added to your objects. And so it's a constant, consistent amount of force per unit of time. So you're in the gravity twice as long, you're going to go twice as fast. You're in it 3 times as long, you're going to go 3 times as fast. Now you're in it 3 times as long, you're going to travel 9 times the distance. But all of that extra distance is being created by your already acquired velocity. You're not getting more force. You're only getting 3 seconds of force, not 9 seconds of force. You're not collecting gravity by distance, you're collecting gravity by time. And the paint sprayer analogy proves that. It's about how long you're exposed to the force, not how much distance you travel in the force. It's just time. It's a time-dependent, clearly time-dependent, undeniably time-dependent force. So the simple argument is there is no bent space, and there is a real force, okay, that is on the external universe, and it does give things motion, and when they hit the surface of the Earth, they have an impact energy, okay, and that can be dispersed in lots of different ways. That can even leave the Earth. It's a surface impact, mostly, but there certainly is a component of it that's going to go inside. And now there's a constant force of the mass itself sitting on the surface is going to apply its mass per every second. It's going to be exposed to this force every second, and that energy as weight goes into the Earth as pressure. So the pressure goes into the Earth. It's moving molecules now in the Earth. The atoms inside of the Earth are now moving. They decidedly have a direction. And the fact is they're going to move a lot of matter. A lot of matter is going to jiggle. So the center of the Earth gets insanely hot, 4,000 degrees. Very, very hot. And it's all melted and liquid. For most of the substance of the Earth is in some plasmatic liquid mobile state, let's just say. And there's no insulating layers. There's no concept of insulating. We can't, even with our technology, we can't produce a perfect insulator. We can never take heat and put it in a bottle and keep it there for 1,000 years. It will escape. So the heat inside the Earth does escape and leave the Earth. Now we're talking about heat in terms of, there's this temperature scale, the Kelvin scale, that starts at 0, and that's the real scale. There's a 0 amount of heat or motion, and then there's some amount of heat or motion. So you're talking about maybe it's only 50 Kelvin, all right, which is 300 or 250 degrees below 0 Celsius. It's very cold, but it in fact is energy. And that's what's out there in the universe, and it covers the surface with that temperature. And that temperature gets placed into a smaller and smaller vessel as it goes inside the Earth. So you can sort of understand the pressure gets greater and greater and greater, but as the surface area gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And so that's how the Earth gets very hot in the center, even though it's very cold on the surface, technically cold. Without the sun's radiation in the atmosphere, the surface of the Earth would be very, very cold, except when the sun's hitting it directly. The dark side of the Earth would be minus 250 degrees Celsius. It would be very, very cold. So we're not talking about the radiation caught in the atmosphere. We're talking about the thermal radiation trapped inside of the Earth. And that does leak out. And it can be felt in the sense that you can dig a hole into the ground, and you're not getting the radiation from the sun anymore. The only heat is the heat coming from the inside of the Earth. And so you can have a constant temperature of 30 or 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and all of that temperature is coming from the center of the Earth, the heat inside the Earth. So it's a lot of heat when you recognize that it's coming from a very small area to a very large area. So obviously the pressure reduces the more surface area you're applying the pressure over, blah, 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 blah. So it can be understood as a real sensible thermodynamic equation. And so the truth is that that's the thermodynamics. So the Earth is radiating at any one moment an amount of radiation, okay, that's coming out of the Earth. And the simple argument is that radiation is a little bit less than the radiation coming from space, because some of the radiation has been used to push matter. And when it's pushing matter, it's moving slower. So there's a force going the speed of light in space, and it has to go through the Earth to get to me, from the other side. The balancing force has to go through the Earth to get to me. And the simple argument is the process of going through the Earth means it's going to interact with a bunch of matter. The matter is going to move a lot slower than the speed of light, so the force that is coming from this side of the universe can't get to me when it should have gotten to me. So I'll be in a force deficit. Now, if we stop gravity, and we stop the external force, the Earth will leak all of its stored energy, the energy it takes to keep fueling the fire. So understand, it has to be constantly refueled. It can't just stay hot. It can't stay 4,000 degrees unless I keep refueling it. I keep applying more pressure. If I stop the pressure, it dissipates the heat very quickly. It'll reduce and become less and less and less and less and less, cooler and cooler and cooler and cooler. So clearly that's the mechanism. Gravity is a real force. It gives things, it exchanges its momentum. So it's like rain falling. I could be on a podium or something getting hit by the rain, or tied to a string, and the rain causes a force, it breaks the string, I fall, whatever kind of analogy you want to use, but I absorb the force hits me, moves my molecules in a downward direction, and there isn't enough force coming from the Earth to balance that until I hit the surface of the Earth. And then I apply my pressure to a bunch of molecules, but the molecules really are just electrons again, and so now I'm increasing the voltage or the pressure inside of those molecules, and they have to release it by pushing up somewhere else, or the pressure has to go down. And that's basically what's happening. So it thermodynamically makes perfectly good sense. You're constantly fueling, that is, you're constantly using more energy to keep the Earth hot, and that little bit of difference is the difference you fall in. That's gravity. You fall in that difference created, and it's not any more complicated than that. So it makes thermodynamic sense. It completes the argument that you really should have a force that's transferring energy. Something that's in the universe already has to be causing gravity. You can't make new energy in the universe. So they say, the physicists say that somehow the universe is getting colder. And here you have an obvious source of new energy constantly being created, new motion, new MV. So the first question I'd say to anybody saying I'm wrong is to tell me that somehow gravity doesn't create new momentum. That obviously bent space isn't a force. It isn't old momentum in the universe. They don't have some explanation where, the heat comes out and it recreates the pressure. They don't have that explanation anywhere. So how do they fuel bent space? It's creating energy. It's creating MV. How does it create it? And how does it destroy it after it created it? And there's, you're not going to have an answer to those questions, and those are the questions that need to be answered. Important. Yeah, really important. All right, so that's a pretty good beginning, I suspect. Let's see what we got here from somebody called an Ash. Hey, man. I have learnt such an unbelievable amount from your work and continue to credit you all the time in my discussions. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Oh, knowledge, tricky word. These are just insights, but I suppose what I'm sharing is years of thought experiments. Years trying to say, okay, here's a thing moving, this is what they say it is, can I make that thing mechanical? Can I come up with some explanation for how it works? And so the simple argument for gravity is, it's just obvious right on its face. You're saying you're giving something MV. And how can there be no source of that motion? Because like I said, it's so you could say, I'm, gee, that's annoying. Let's see, can I fix this throat thing? It's always something, right? Getting old sucks. So Descartes, made this first argument. I'd say it's not an argument that a million people couldn't draw the same conclusion. That you could look at the world and realize that the energy doesn't get destroyed. That the bowling pins, the ball hits the pins, it makes noise, the pins make noise, the wall gets vibrated, the whole area where the pins are must be getting warmer. So you can do all of that and figure out that this is something that keeps moving, that energy isn't a killable element in the universe, and that all you can do is transfer it. Like a Newton's cradle, you can, my Newton's cradle got all tangled. Anyway, all you can do is transfer it. You can just take it from one object and give it to another object, or you give it to 10 objects, or you give it to 5 million objects. You can just share it, and all you're sharing is the total. Is what you're going to share is m times v. That's the only quantity there is, the quantity of motion. So, Descartes and Newton really did create a good foundation, and the rest of it is just doing the modeling. The rest of it is just saying, well, let's take what we have in the real world and try to figure out how exactly this mechanism functions. And again, this argument is so obvious. So, Einstein proposes bent space in 1905, and how is this how is this an explanation for anything? It has the inverse square law in it. We already knew that, so nothing new. And it's just applying it and saying, Newton could have come up with magic God does it, or a five-headed dog pushes things. 5-headed dogs push it. He could have come up with some silly explanation, and Einstein just basically said the invisible man does it, the invisible bent space geodesic-y thingy. Okay, so the thing with no energy in it does it, and the thing you can't refuel with heat. How does heat refuel the bent geodesic? How does it refuel bent space-time? Heat can't refuel it, but obviously heat can refuel in this system, because what you're basically just saying is you're taking force going the speed of light, converting it into force pushing matter going much slower than the speed of light, and then converting it back to force going the speed of light. And there's just a delay in the process, and that delay is what you fall in. Ultimately, everything goes in, comes out, but that's only ultimately. Right now, what went in isn't coming out. Okay, right this second, the amount of energy that went in isn't the same as the energy coming out. I have to wait for the energy that went in right now to come out. And that's what you're falling in. And it's just so obvious it works. It's a perfectly reasonable explanation. And frankly, I probably will get around to having somebody create a simulation of it based on that simple idea that you just calculate how much goes in, you give it a delay in coming out, and you're obviously going to have every material body out in the field is going to be pulled in because it doesn't know that the energy is going to show up. Okay, eventually it's going to leak back out if I turn off the waterfall, that the drain will drain everything. Well, it doesn't know that. It'll come back out into the field, so to speak. So you can just understand it, that you're taking a field that's got, say, 50 things in it. You're putting 10 of them inside the earth, and now only 40, are in the field. You've just reduced how many are there. But if I wait a little while, the 50 will get restored again. So you have perfect conservation. The thermodynamics is perfectly conservative. And it's a real mechanism. And we already know that this speed of light force exists. We already know the universe is full of energy. We know it. Now, they'll say it's only 2 joules worth of microwave background. And it's only, this tiny... But we know that if you measure the temperature on the back side of the Earth, the coldest temperature you're going to get is going to be 30 or 40 degrees Kelvin. So you already know that even places that are insanely cold aren't zero. So it's there. It's getting hit by radiation. The only thing that could possibly heat the coldest crevice on the dark side of the moon has to be radiant energy. So it's there. And it's just doing a simple calculation. What if I did apply 50 Kelvin to the entire surface of the Earth? How hot would it be in something with a 500-mile diameter? So, you know, I'm not a mathematician, so I'm not going to be very good at doing that calculation. But frankly, you can imagine that, yes, at every twice the distance, it's going to get 4 times hotter. So I go half the distance, it's 4 times hotter. I go half the distance, it's 4 times hotter. You know, it's just going to get very, very hot very, very quickly. All right. So Rand says, kinetic energy, question mark. So this isn't really kinetic energy. I'm really talking about gravity this time. But yes, frankly, kinetic energy plays no role. It makes no sense, and it's just a fable. So yes, nobody should be talking about it as if it's serious. But that's a separate video, please. It just happens when stuff moves. So I don't know what the hell that means. So I don't. What the hell are you saying there? It just happens when stuff moves. It's a clear argument they're making that it's this quadratic increase. So velocity somehow changes mv. It breaks this simple idea of proportionality between mass and velocity and says velocity is somehow extremely important and mass is very unimportant. And obviously the argument I would be making is that no, 1,000 atoms going 1 mile an hour is going to open just as many doors as 1 atom going 1,000 miles an hour. It's going to move just as much matter in the universe. It's going to create just as many photons. It's going to create just as much momentum, because the only thing it has is momentum. And their momentums are the same. And the only thing you can transfer is momentum. And that's proven in every frickin' experiment you can do. You can only transfer momentum. Let's see. Faster or heavier stuff has more. So you're not even getting it right? The heavier stuff is almost weak. It doesn't do anything. So I make a 400-pound man, right, and I give him the appropriate velocity. I don't get anywhere. But if I make a 50-pound man and I give him a higher velocity, he's going to have quadratically more. He's going to have 5 or 10 times more energy. So a little midget going really fast into a quarterback is somehow more effective than a big, giant, huge, humongous guy crashing into the quarterback at a slower speed. So they're making the argument that it's not about momentum. It's about some notion that there's this quadratic increase in power with velocity. And it's not true. It doesn't actually happen. If they actually did test any of this stuff with a joule tank, that is, if they fired into a tank of water a bullet and then they let the recoiling gun hit the water, those two things are going to create the same joules of heat in that water, because that's all they can do is transfer momentum. Every single experiment shows that's all you can do. But again, I don't want to make the kinetic energy video. This is the gravity video. So, please. So let's try to talk about gravity if you can manage it. And so there aren't anybody managing it. It says there's no viewers. Huh? I don't know. Well, that's no good. So during the day doesn't work too good either. So I wish I could just pause and say, okay, let's just cut this part out of the video. But really, I don't know if I can do that. If I can cut the stream off and then restart it. I mean, they don't have anything called like an obvious pause button here. So they have end stream, and that's about it. So I don't think I can just pause. So if somebody knows anything about how this live crap works, I'd be interested. Because, I don't want to have a permanent video up with a big giant pause in it. And I really don't want to bother editing the video after. So, I don't think there's a resolution to that problem. So I'll have to keep talking. And see if anybody shows up who has any kind of notion that they want to defend the current theory of gravity as a bent space-time geodesic that has no fuel and doesn't do anything with the added heat. So the real argument is, do you understand that gravity does create heat? because if you understand that the extra motion created by objects and the pressure they're applying to the surface. Okay, so I guess I could talk about that. That's probably a good angle to use. So you have the surface of the Earth, and obviously the objects just sitting on the Earth are applying a substantial pressure based on their weight onto the Earth. Okay, and then you have whatever falling stuff or hitting stuff that hits the Earth also doing the same thing. And is there any other explanation than this stuff causes the Earth to get hot? Is there any other possible consequence to gravity causing motion, causing weight? Okay, this has weight. Then heating the Earth. Is there some other explanation that's possible? That all of that gravitational motion will be converted into heat, that the Earth will get hot. Even if you thought it was just surface heat, you know that this is going to push in, and that's going to move atoms, and then they're going to push back out, and then they're going to get pushed back in by matter, and it's going to get pushed out, and it's going to be a ton of jiggling happening on the surface of the Earth. So you know it's generating heat. Can you deny that it makes heat? That all of the motion is converted into heat? Now, I'd say it's obvious that the heat goes right down into the center of the Earth, but I'm just saying, if you don't believe that, well, you have to believe that, right? You have to know that the deeper you go in the Earth, you have more and more mass on top of you, and it's more and more weight on top of you. And it's just crushing you, constantly crushing. It gets crushingly high pressure. You go a mile down, it's huge amounts of pressure, just gigantic amounts of pressure. You couldn't even make a tunnel because it would collapse. You could use the strongest steel and it would crush it and bend it because there's an incredible amount of pressure. Well, a mile, I have to go a more mile. You can dig into really hard rock and get away with it. But I'm just saying the pressure does get enormous. So you know that the heat's really going down, and and it's getting hotter and hotter, and then you have the atmosphere and the crust of the Earth and the little layer of crap that the what would you call them? The plates are floating on, so to speak. That is all its own system. Okay, the moving continents, all of that stuff is creating volcanoes and stuff, that lava and whatnot. So that's not really the center of the Earth kind of heat getting to the surface. It's a bit different. Anyway, but it doesn't matter. All of it's being created by this weight being created, mass applying weight, applying pressure. So this is all real heat, and it has to radiate back out into the universe. So you have this bent geodesic that created free motion. The motion has to be leaving as radiant heat. It has to happen. You can't deny that, right? So that this has got to be called plus energy in the universe, right? There's no source for it. You didn't consume anything that had energy to make this heat. You didn't consume heat to make this heat by your bent geodesic, bent space-time theory. So you'd have to say the universe is constantly creating heat into the universe, that it's getting hotter and hotter because it has a constant supply. Every single material body is radiating this heat, especially suns in particular. But there's a huge amount of this heat being radiated by all of these. Look, the Jupiter gets barely any sunlight. I mean, it's a tiny amount, but it has a swirling, active atmosphere. Well, where do you think all the heat for that swirling atmosphere comes from? It comes from inside of Jupiter. It comes from gravity. Gravity is creating that. Gravity creates heat. The heat radiates out, heats the atmosphere, swirls it around. It's just, so you have to concede this. I don't know, how do you unconcede it? How do you reject the simple notion that your bent geodesic created an MV, and that MV is going to leave, okay, as the same amount of momentum in the form of heat? Can you provide any kind of argument, any kind of insight into how you have your theory accounts for this constant source of heat being created by every material object in the universe? Every asteroid, every planet, every sun is generating, okay, this heat. Can you deny that? And again, we're talking about just tiny degrees in Kelvin, but that's real heat. It's real heat in the universe. You won't have any explanation. All right, so Daniel Newman. I don't know what number 2 means. He's got a little thing that says number 2. I wonder what that means. Sorry to derail, but just curious. So yeah, no, I really don't want to do derailing. What cosmology you're endorsing? I'm not endorsing anything called cosmology. I endorse physics. There's one universe, and it's the tiny one. The big one is bullshit, frankly. It's a consequence of the tiny one. Electrons and protons in a field of force. That's the only thing in the universe that actually has laws and rules. Those are the laws and rules that make everything else. So I'm doing physics, and physics is explaining how those little moving objects, electrons and protons, and the speed of light force that's fiddling with them, the force fiddles with the mass, and then the mass fiddles with the force. That's how it works. And it all starts with charge. It all starts with electron, proton, dipole, atom. And then you're off to the races. Then you have chemistry. That's the real universe. The big one out there is just big blobs of chemistry. Okay? It's not that interesting. You might think it's interesting. I'm saying it's really simple, because all it's doing basically is sinking heat. All the planets, all the things, they're just heat sinks. Okay, and because they get hot, they change colors and do different things, but that's it. There's nothing fascinating going on. It's just mass getting hot. All right, cosmology you're endorsing. Big Bang, I don't care about, frankly, what happened 37.8 billion years ago. No, there's no footprints. Okay, there's no footprints left, so fuck it. I couldn't care less. I would argue, okay, and I have nothing to base it on except it seems reasonable, that the universe is just oscillating. Okay, the galaxies get a little smaller, they get a little bigger. They get a little smaller, they get a little bigger. Because of this process. Because every time heat from the universe is sunk as motion in a planet, okay, you've taken some energy out of the external world, the free world, and you've put it in jail. And then every time one of these things blows up, like a supernova or some other thing, then a whole bunch of energy goes back into the free field, okay, and it's out of jail. And so there's a little tiny bit more gravity when stuff blows up a lot, and then there's a little less gravity when it doesn't. And so it's just doing this constant expansion and contraction. So yes, steady state would be my argument. Multiverse, fuck that in the ass till very, very dead. And frankly, make sure it gets herpes and dies, because it's the stupidest piece of made-up babble invented by silly, crazy motherfucking kooks. Every single time, right? There's no way to even describe how many electrons and protons there are in the universe. But to describe all of the little bits of force, and then to say, every time a little bit of force hits an electron or proton, a new universe is created, is so fucking idiotic. I shouldn't have to endure the indignity of saying you can't be serious. It's like a double Holy Ghost. It's like saying the Holy Ghost has two heads. It's just ludicrously ludicrous. Okay. So he says, Rand guy comes back with, energy spreads out. Okay, not a very scientific statement, but okay, it's moving. Yes, and if things are moving, they can't stay where they are. That's true. Okay, systems head towards disorder. That's just a bullshit word, okay? There's no disorder. They scatter. They spread. Spreading isn't disorder. Spreading just is harder for us to keep track of. But there's no disorder in it. An explosion happens. Oh, it's chaos, it's disorder. No, there's nothing disorderly happening. There's little bits of stuff flying out. A nuclear bomb. There's no disorder. It's all perfectly rational what's going to happen. The little bits hit something else. They hit a bigger thing. It goes slower. You know, the light gets to you before the sound gets to you. It's all perfectly logical. So fuck the word disorder. Okay, and heat sinks are the final stop. So there's no final stop. So how could you possibly say that? Where in the universe does heat sink and stop? So just point out to me some thermos where you put heat in and the heat never gets back out again. I mean, that's just too fucking stupid, buddy. The ride there, though, is full of motion. So again, he's saying that somehow you can kill heat. You can find a place where you will kill it. I mean, you have no evidence of such a place. Okay. Transfer and transformations, and makes the universe interesting. Oh, fuck you in the ass. I mean, this interesting shit. These are physics arguments. It's about a model. It's about representing what the truth is. This isn't about interesting, fucker. Oh God, you're just so perfect description of why science sucks and is broken, is because you wooey little waste of time thinks it should be interesting and magical and all this other bullshit. It's some sort of entertainment show. Fuck you. Okay. It's a description of the goddamn fucking truth, and your little wooey friends are in such catastrophic denial. They have chosen badly every single fucking time they had a choice. You know, atoms made out of magnetic model, you know, where the electrons don't rotate and spin and do all this crap, or an atom made out of rotating, spinning nonsense. They choose badly. They didn't get the atom right. They didn't get electricity right. Plus and minus they didn't assign right. And clearly the energy thing is just so obvious. Why would you choose 1/2 mv squared when mv works perfectly? Perfectly. Perfectly. It worked perfectly in the 1600s, and you broke it for no good reason. Absolutely no good reason to break mv conservation as a notion of energy in the universe. It works fine. There's no example of it failing. So yes, until you show me evidence of the heat sink where the heat doesn't come back out, yeah, that's a bogus assertion on your part. I can destroy heat. Yeah, well, let's see it. Let's see where you made it go someplace and it never comes back out. Can you explain what this about? You know, it's about an incomplete sentence so far. All this variety come from what? So yeah, just go away. Well, I have to explain evolution to you, so I have to explain all of chemistry, you know, how chemicals get more and more complicated. Then I'd have to explain how there's a thing called a protein, which is a very long molecule, and that when it turns into a double helix, it ends up making copies of itself, and now we have reproduction in the universe, and that now you can make machines because the code can be read off the DNA molecule, and now you can make more and more complex organisms and go from parameciums to human beings. And I have to explain all this to you. Fuck you. Go to school. Jesus Christ. I mean, humans are just so... I mean, why would somebody even type something so inanely broad and nonsensical? I mean, as I just pointed out, the universe is just made out of electrons and protons being pushed by a force. And there's explicit laws about how those things interact. And that's it. 3 laws, actually. There's absorption, reflection, and transition. So, you know, proton force goes in and electron force comes out, that kind of thing. That's it, 3 little rules. And the rules have built into them the idea that when you're going to gain your motion, your momentum, it's going to be, the force bit has a certain unit of momentum, the mass of the electron is a certain amount of mass, and so obviously when the force bit pushes, like a Sisyphus pushing a boulder, it can't go the speed of light anymore. It has to go slower than its original speed because it has to share its motion, its mv, with the big heavier object. But those simple rules are the universe. There is no other universe. That's the only one that exists. That's the only one that has real laws. That's the only one really doing anything in the empty space. That's the only one that's a real universe. You're just a manifestation of what's happening in that universe. You're a complex arrangement of confinements, where electrons and protons have done their attraction and repulsion thing and gone into arrangements, and those arrangements get more and more complicated, and you're a big giant ball of complication, an insanely huge ball of complication. But the rules of the complexity are simple. It's a zillion checkers. I can make all kinds of pictures with a zillion checkers, black and white, red and white, red and black. I can just take pixels and turn them on, turn them off, and I can make any image you want to imagine because I have a trillion pixels on this screen. So the universe can make any kind of arrangement of the red and the black checkers. Heat sinks into everything until it all evens out. So again, that doesn't say anything. It's obviously not even when it's going into something. And obviously, as pointed out, it gets hotter and hotter the more smaller the surface area that heat is applied to. So none of what you're saying has anything to do with anything, eventually leading to the universe heat death. So again, absolute nonsense. You have no evidence of the universe's heat death because I just pointed out how every body is creating free heat. Every material body is creating heat from nowhere. Bent space doesn't say heat created gravity. It doesn't say photons did it. It doesn't say microwave background did it. It doesn't say anything about radiation causing it. It says a bent space geodesic thing did it. So you made free heat in the universe. So how could the universe be running out of heat when every body is radiating free heat? God, you're just not going to even pay any attention to the argument. I mean, this is what it's like. You can't, these people just can't have an honest conversation. There's just they won't do it. The simple premise, I just sat here and said, oh, look, how else do you describe it? Explain to me how the bent geodesic causes motion. Where does the motion come from? What made the motion? Where did you get the energy for the motion? The bent geodesic doesn't have any energy to give. So it obviously had to make new energy in the universe. The motion has to be new energy in the universe because it didn't take it from some other place. It didn't collect it in a drain somewhere. It didn't collect it somewhere and then bring it over here to move that object. Ugh, people. All right, Daniel Newman. Let's see. Everyone radiates heat, but so does everything else. So that doesn't mean anything. It's the source of it, moron. We're not talking about our chemical heat. Okay, that's not the conversation here. We're talking about the impact weight on the Earth. Right now, I'm heating the Earth. My mass is given weight in a direction. That weight applies pressure. That pressure gets converted into heat. And you're just changing the subject. Okay, including the cold vastness of space. So that's the whole argument, jackass, is that the vastness of space is actually hot. Okay, by Kelvin, it's hot. Okay, over time, all the radiation balances out. So again, this is just baby talk. Of course it all balances out. It's conservation of momentum. That's my argument, moron. I'm saying, where does it come from? You're saying you made something move with gravity. I'm asking you, where the fuck the energy came from, fuckhead? Oh, you're just such a liar. All right, so Newman says, you use the words tiny universe. Yeah, I'm using the word tiny to describe the fact that where electrons and protons exist is tiny. Very small, little tiny spaces that these things exist in. Yeah, that's what I'm doing, jackass. Oh, you can just like this. This is all they can do is play these little word games, this minutiae shit. He doesn't understand the idea of big universe, tiny universe. You know, the little macro, micro universe, macro. You know, he doesn't understand those concepts. Are you implying that there is a barrier? No, I didn't. Did I use the word barrier anywhere? So I don't think I am. Where nothing exists outside it. So again, where am I implying that? I'm saying I'm made out of electrons and protons. Elementally, that's what I'm made out of. You can ignore the atoms. You can ignore the chemistry. You can ignore all that crap. The only thing that's really an actor are the electrons and protons. They're the only things being affected by the goddamn force. Atoms aren't affected by the goddamn force. No, electrons and protons are, okay? Charge is. That's the elemental function, charge. The thing that makes dipoles, the thing that makes magnets, the thing that causes these effects because electrons are are reflecting the universe exactly opposite the way the electrons and protons are reflecting an opposite universe. It's so simple. Okay. Barrier where nothing exists outside it. So fuck you. Again, nothing exists outside of an electron. An electron's an empty space, and there's force bits that constantly hit it. Bits of force. That's the universe. Little BBs and big blobs. All right. It has to be infinite, right? I don't give a fuck whether it's infinite or not infinite. Why does it have to be infinite? Why can't the universe be a bubble and the energy just reflects off the outside of the bubble? But why would I care? What does that have to do with the fucking subject? How big the fucking universe is? That doesn't have anything to do with the fucking subject. The subject is fucking gravity, and the fact is that bent space is supposed to create magical energy. That's the fucking subject I'm talking about. Can you stay on the fucking subject somewhere? God, you people are just so fucking cheaters. It has to be infinite, right? Because whatever that is, literally nothing as a concept is a logical issue. I don't even know what that even means. So where am I talking about a nothing? Where's nothing in here somewhere? There's no nothing in this goddamn theory. There's two kinds of force, frankly. Okay, I've simulated this already. Perfectly duplicates charge, by the way. Two kinds of force, okay? They can be red and blue, or they could be square and round, or they could be who the fuck gives a damn. They're obviously opposite by some... They have a property that makes them identifiable. And there's two kinds of matter. There's protons and there's electrons. You put a proton together with an electron, you end up with a neutron. Okay, but that's all there are. There's nothing else. There's two kinds of force, two kinds of matter, and three fucking interactions. And yes, it perfectly duplicates charge. Perfectly duplicates everything Maxwell said charges would do. Oh, God, I hate you people. All right, black, white. If you admit on determinism, what is it? What is this? This isn't even a sentence. If you admit on determinism, then I don't think so. Fuck you. It's a completely deterministic universe by these simple rules and laws. You can't violate them in any place, okay? You can't violate the simple mechanical fact that it's a push-averse. Things bang into each other by explicit rules. Oh, God. Us being feeling on existence makes sense of free logic. Well, I'm just going to block this guy, right? Because he can't write anything that's fucking goddamn sensible. Just go somewhere else. I'll put you in a timeout. 10 minutes? No, 30 minutes at least. All right. I don't want to hear from him again, frankly. Got it. Just wanted to clarify. Understand what you mean now. Good. Okay. Thank you. Right, the energy comes from the work done by forces. All right, so there's no forces in the bent space theory. That's the whole fucking point. They're saying it's not a goddamn force, you asshole. They have no identifiable force that's causing the motion, you fucking asshole. You don't even know anything about this subject, do you? I mean, just admit you know absolutely nothing about gravitational physics and what the theory, Einstein's theory, actually proposes. You know nothing, right? All right, like the sun's nuclear reactions, which is more bullshit, okay? The sun's nuclear reactions are irrelevant. It really is. It's irrelevant. The sun is hot because of gravity. It's not hot because it's making helium. All right. The reason why they'll never create a fusion reactor is because there's no such thing as smashing atoms together and making energy that way. You can't make energy by smashing things together. You have to make energy by taking things that are already been smashed together and breaking them apart. Fission works, fusion doesn't. Sorry, I probably said that wrong. Chemical reactions in your body, oh, geez, you're just wasting my time, are gravity pulling things around. These processes release stored energy. So again, you don't know what bent space is. All right, so either just retract what you just said and say, okay, I don't understand the subject at all. I'm arguing about bent space-time. I'm arguing it's not a rational theory of gravity because it has no source of energy, and it doesn't do anything with the energy created. Regular physics thinks that the Earth is hot because it got hit by meteors 4 billion years ago. Now, obviously, that can't work because we can't make an insulator that perfect, and clearly nature can't make one. There's nothing inside the Earth that's non-conductive. The energy has to leak out of the Earth. There's no other alternative. It has to equalize its black body pressure. It has to. Doesn't have a choice. It has to radiate the energy back out. God, you people are so fucking dumb. Nuclear reactions, chemical reactions in your body are gravity pulling things around. So again, here we are, gravity pulling. Obviously, it's a push force, but I mean, besides that, even if you didn't play that silly game, where is the energy come from for the pull, fuckhead? It's causing things to have MV. I emphasize the word MV. I emphasized in the previous drawing. It was all over the goddamn place. It's creating something called momentum. You have to explain where the fucking momentum goes. Jesus Christ. I just... See, this is why you have to have somebody in the room you can interrogate. Because they just do this weaselly bullshit of... That's not the subject. That's not the subject. The subject is bent space. Bent space says, okay, be in space time says, I put something here. And it's given motion. It's given MV. It is given energy. Okay? Energy manifests in it. There's no source for that energy. So it's now breaking the conservation in the universe because you're now creating new energy in the universe. And the simple argument is quite obviously that heat goes into the earth, and quite obviously that heat ends up radiating out of the earth. And now you have a big source of free heat in the universe. And the obvious statement to make is, well, obviously the heat is what's causing the pressure differential that causes the motion in the first place. It's the heat in the universe that's pushing things into the fucking goddamn planet. Duh. It's not a bent geodesic. It's not bent space-time. It's a fucking real radiant force. So, let's see if there's anything else. This is amazing. How long will it take for all of these morons just to concede, yeah, bent space doesn't make any sense. Free energy is stupid. Let's find a better answer than a bent geodesic, because a bent geodesic doesn't have arms, and a bent geodesic can't push on anything, and a bent geodesic doesn't have radiation, and a bent geodesic doesn't have any source of energy. The silly thing is, I mean, is, you know, your people who just reject the idea out of hand, is that the mechanics is exactly the same. Again, Leonard Susskind, the expert on Einstein's theories, teaches it as a fluid, and like boats in the fluid, and the boats get moved by the fluid. I mean, he teaches it exactly as if there was a real force that has pushing things. I mean, duh. You can't figure out that if the guy teaching the damn subject has to resort to analogies that have real forces in them, that the real answer is likely that there's a real force involved. And it's so obvious what the real force is. Heat. Oh, you people are so full of shit. Okay, so well, this will be your last comment. Gravity doesn't spend energy to pull. So I just pointed out how obviously it's creating momentum. You won't concede the absolute fact that it creates momentum in objects. It's just an absolute fact, and you're denying that absolute fact. So we can't have an argument. We can't have a discussion, because you're in complete denial of the absolute truth. It's creating momentum. Momentum is energy. All right, it is a property of mass warping space-time. So again, more absolute nonsense. So there's no source for the momentum. I'm talking about the momentum, asshole. You're denying that gravity doesn't create momentum. Obviously, it does create momentum. Obviously, when I'm sitting on the surface of the Earth, I'm causing pressure to be pushed onto the Earth constantly. Okay? A constant amount of weight. Real weight is being applied to the Earth. That real weight is energy. It is heat. Okay, like an apple falling. Okay, yeah, you're just done forever. That is just such inane babble after all of this bullshit. So just fuck off. This useless shit. If you won't accept the first premise, you have to argue the premise. Obviously, as pointed out, I place something in space. It has no motion. It has no MV. Gravity will cause it to acquire MV. That's the absolute fact. There's no definition of a source for that MV. That is, it's not taking it from some Newton's cradle. It's not taking it from some radiant energy. It's not taking it from somebody blowing on it. There's no source of the MV. It's free energy. It's new energy in the universe. That MV is new energy in the universe. If you can't accept that premise, we just can't have a conversation, because it's an absolute fact of the circumstance. That's exactly what gravity does. Gravity causes motion, and it causes it without any mechanical mechanism moving the object. There's no mechanical mechanism that's causing the motion. And without a mechanical mechanism, then you're outside the laws of conservation. You've created a new source of energy in the universe. Undeniable. Unfucking deniable. You can't be a reasonable person and say something else. Alrighty then. Yeah, so it looks like that's the end of the room. Okay. You got to get more participants to yell at, but whatever. It's just I have to find somebody on the internet with balls. See, I have balls. I'll talk on the internet to almost anybody about anything. But yeah, there's got to be somebody else on this planet. I mean, a planet of 8 billion people, and we can't find somebody else who can make arguments on the internet? I mean, it almost seems insane. How can it be possible that none of you people can make a video? None of you people can show up in a room? None of you? You're all just ballless, weak retards that can't do anything? All right. You reject all the modal science of wave theory. So yeah, of course I do. Yeah, that's right. There's no such thing as an elemental wave. So again, you're not doing physics. You're pretending that somehow there's something that, oh, something elementally waves, whatever the fuck that is. Particles can look like a wave, but waves can't look like a particle. So you're out of luck. Yes, waves are silly, and I've proven that too with the double slit experiment. It's on the website. That's why these websites are right down here, draftphysics.com. You go there, there's a video on photons. It'll explain why wave theory is absolute bullshit. Hey there, I'm connected to channels called Physics Explains. I contacted 2 channels. There's 2 of them called the same thing. Yeah, it's fine. I'm glad you're trying. So yes, if you can actually solicit somebody's participation, like I said, you can offer them money. You can do whatever you have to do to get them interested. Because I will pay them to participate in a conversation and explain where I said anything in this video that was wrong. Because I didn't say anything that's wrong. I'm absolutely right, and they have no counter argument. All right, you do got the truth, so tell us we still curious about quantum. Yeah, that's a different video, okay? That's not, you have to sort of understand the agenda of conversation with people. They can't handle every subject in one video, okay? That's just not going to work. So I've decided that this video was about bed space and gravity, and that's the subject of this video. Quantum is just, again, I believe in quantum. Obviously, I believe in very tiny discrete bits, so I believe in a quantized universe. Obviously, I think quantum mechanics is absolute horseshit because it's some kind of silly notion that the discrete bits don't know where they are and don't know where they're going. Yeah. The other channel is called Today I Learned Science. Yeah, okay. Look, I've been to a ton of channels on YouTube, so maybe I've already contacted these people. But yeah, if you can get anywhere, fine. I couldn't get anywhere. Again, I've offered over 40 channels $2,000 to deal with the subject, and they won't do it. 40 channels. Well, $2,000 or less, let's just say. It's probably, if I was to say an exact number, yes, there's at least 25 channels I've offered $20,000 or more to. And then there's another 20 channels that I offered something less than $20,000. I mean, $2,000, sorry. I offered Veritasium to write his own check, essentially. I said, I'll give you more than $4,000, just tell me the number. He wouldn't tell me the number. So I offered him 4 and said, I'll even go higher. Yeah. No response. Joe Rogan, Steve Mould, you go down the list. $4,000. Thunderfoot, $4,000. No response. All right, quantum can make element particles from nothing. Okay, I'm not going to argue that. Okay, you want to believe it. They've shown you nothing, and you want to believe a fable. That's your business. Okay, there's just no evidence for any of that nonsense. So you want to believe in antimatter and neutrinos and things poof in and then they annihilate, and you want to believe all that sissy, idiotic crap. Okay, why don't you just believe in the Easter rabbit, because it's just as evidenced as the Easter rabbit. Okay, so you can just go fuck yourself. There's no proven by observation, so you're just so full of shit. So yeah, I'm definitely timing you out, asswipe. You got nothing. And it's not even the subject of this fucking goddamn video. Can you understand that little bit, you dumb moron? You can't even stay on the fucking goddamn subject. A big enough subject, gravity, and you can't stay on it. You fucking piece of shit. You can have 24 hours. Yeah, fuck you. Oh, God. Tell us what MV... I'm just, there's no point. It's the mass with the velocity spread over it. So it's just saying you have a piece of bread and I have an amount of peanut butter. The bigger the bread, the thinner the peanut butter. Duh. Okay. For people who are now here, what do you mean, Daniel? They don't need to have MV explained to them. It was called by Newton and Descartes quantity of motion. Okay, it's just this simple concept that things move based on how heavy they are. They'll have a velocity. So if I can make them very small and put the same amount of peanut butter on them, they'll go very fast. If they're very big and I only have a little tiny spoonful of peanut butter, well, then they'll go very slow. Not complicated at all. I don't need to explain that to anybody. Shit. Shit. God damn. If that has to be explained, they're not going to understand anything about bent space and what the actual theory says. So what's the point? I'm arguing against Einstein's silly fable story about some bent geodesic doing something, some magical bent thing that doesn't exist as a thing. Now, later in his life, he did concede it must be an ether. So, you could argue that Einstein was an etherist. Because he's basically saying, well, it has to be something. It can't be nothing, right? Yeah, nothing doing something is really dumb. Nothing can't do something, so the nothing must be something. So it's really all a lie, because he really doesn't believe in anything called space. Okay. Have you responded to Brian Cox lectures? Well, then you talk about sissy. Anyway, what's to respond to? It's all absolute crap. So I think I responded to one of his videos where he did the double slit experiment in the Royal Institution. And again, it was just a fraud, okay, in the sense that it was doing this, magical one photon at a time experiment. And we know it's not one photon at a time. I know. I mean, maybe you don't know, but I have explained over and over again that a black piece of glass, okay, is like putting 1,000,000 two-slit experiments in front of a light source. That's exactly what it's doing. It's just going to scatter the light all over the place. It's not going to make one photon. It's going to make a ton of broken photons. It's a perfect source of broken photons. So it's, they make the axiomatic statement that we're making one photon. No, you're not. So their axiom is wrong. Their initial premise stating what the damn thing is. They glue a horn on a sheep and they tell us it's a unicorn. So unicorn in. No, there's no unicorn in. It's a fucking sheep with a horn glued on its head. And so 90% of their experiments are these false premises. They do Stern-Gerlach to say what electrons spin. They're whole silver atoms flying through space, and then they're going to tell me that they're measuring the spin on an electron. You're not measuring the spin on an electron. It's a ludicrous argument, right? I mean, it's a ludicrous argument. There's no electrons. There's just silver atoms flying from one place to another. How are you measuring electron spin? I mean, it's so fuck you, that's idiotic. How can you make that leap and call it science? I mean, I have nothing against gay people and all that kind of crap. That's no skin. I'm just saying, I have a right to say that somebody's really affected. Okay, they're eccentric. When somebody's eccentric, I have a right to say they're eccentric. Somebody can call me eccentric. It's okay with me. They don't even want to say I'm queer. It's okay with me too. I'm just saying, it is just a fact. All right. I mean, Brian Cox's girly physics I can't even listen to him because it's so wooey and silly and magical and special. Oh, I just love it. It's not science. It's showy, girly crap. It's wooey and poofter put together. I mean, it's just bad. Woo poof. It's woo poof. I can't watch woo poof. Yeah, it's just sorry. It's just so sad. You know, I just watched a little bit of Rational Science. You know, Bill Gates, and you know he's just so right about so many things, and then he goes way off the tracks and says something like, "You don't need experiments." He's like, "What the fuck? What do you mean you don't need experiments? You fucking lunatic! You can't do science without experiments, you crazy fuck." And you're just like, why would he say that? I mean, yes, the whole string theory, rope theory, is just idiotic, but I mean. You know, he's so right about so much about how physics has gone so wrong. And then he says something that just, you don't need any math. Well, of course you need some math. MV is math. You need some math. All right. What you don't need is Forky symbol, meaning, well, that's, you know, a formula for everything in the universe. Yeah. Forky thing means the formula for everything in the universe. Well, what the fuck are you talking about? You have an equation with every known fact in the universe is part of the equation? Fuck you. So it's like Einstein's field equations. There's no equation. It's just take this equation and multiply it by this equation and then multiply it by this equation and multiply it by this equation. None of them are completed equations. I mean, it's just such a pile of shit. You know, a bunch of fake bullshit things that are doing something. And like I said, I did see a math page, you know, math forum, where mathematicians were arguing that the only thing that Einstein's tensor does is move the sun. It moves the sun. So if you're moving the sun, well, then that would cause Mercury to precess. If the sun has a precession, then Mercury would have a precession. You know, and it could be that simple. But obviously, I'm not enough of a mathematician to judge one way or the other. So, yeah, I can't do that. But it seems very plausible. That's all that Einstein's field equations do is cause the sun to precess. If the sun precesses, then Mercury precesses. And because Venus and the Earth are so much further away, the precession isn't enough. It's like seeing two headlights from a distance. You can't see it. So from a very far distance, precession doesn't have any meaning. You have to be close for a precession to matter. Simple explanation. I'd bet pretty good money on it being the explanation. I mean, there really is every likelihood that the sun's center of mass does precess. I mean, it just makes kind of perfect sense that because most of the galaxies and most of the things we know in space start off as two objects rotating around each other. You know, that's the core of a lot of the galactic physics is that origin. And then the galaxies themselves are sort of proving that because there's as much mass on one side of the galaxy as there is on the other side. Unlike the solar system, galaxies are balanced by mass out on the arms. And I'd argue that the mass on the arms is more mass than what's in the center. There's more solar masses in the arms of a galaxy than there are in the center of the galaxy. There's a word for those dual sun things. What do you call that? When two things are... Oh, fuck. I just hate that I lose my vocabulary with age. Damn it. There's a simple word for that. By something. Somebody know it? Oh, come on. Two things rotating around each other. It's a word for that. Well, anyway. But so the sun could have, that could be inside the sun. Perfectly reasonable speculation. Let's see. Bent space is really a weak description which physics, gravity has to be generated by a something. Yes, exactly. I'm just saying it's an absolute proof that it gives things momentum and it doesn't account for where the momentum is exchanged from. We know that momentum can only be exchanged. That's the only way energy moves through the universe is through exchanges. Well, what was exchanged to create the motion? What's the exchanging source? So he's titled "What is this life?" question mark. What it is electrons and protons. Sorry, that's all you are. It's a blob of electrons and protons being wanked around. You're just a machine. The core is molten for all these years. So again, it's constantly fueled by its mass. So again, that's the simple argument. The dinosaurs heated it, we're heating it, mosquitoes heat it, pebbles heat it, sand heats it, water heats it. It's just constantly being heated by a constant application of pressure. And again, it's just a ridiculous theory to say it got hot by meteor bombardments and then somehow it retained all that heat for 4 billion years. Yeah, no chance. Well, let's say 2 billion when their meteors pretty much stopped coming hot and heavy. There's just no insulator. Like I said, I looked into it with how do they insulate liquid nitrogen, how they do this, and there are no perfect thermoses. If you buy liquid nitrogen, it's gonna turn into gas in 24 hours. You're out of luck. That's it. So unless you buy it in the high pressure steel tank, you can't store it. It just it gets too hot. And clearly the Earth doesn't have like some, that's when we build it with a vacuum layer and do all this stuff to try to make it insulated. The Earth doesn't have any insulating layers. It has conductors piled on top of each other. It has a bunch of conductive metals and silicates and whatnot that are very good at conducting heat, especially when they're in their molten state. So, yeah, there's just absolutely no good reason to say the heat can't escape. It got trapped somehow. It's idiotic. It's just an idiotic theory. It is bad. It's such bad physics. And the very fact that physicists would even suggest it is really stupid. And let's understand, they have a second theory that it's radiation. So there's a bunch of uranium in the center of the Earth, and somehow the uranium is causing the heat. And, every physicist knows the half-life of radiation, of uranium, is 10,000 years. And when it's compressed or compacted in density, it goes down to like 500 years. So you would start losing half your radiation material every 10,000 years. Half of it's gone. How could that possibly work for billions of years? A billion years. You know that the Earth has to have a pretty stable environment for the last billion years because life evolved. Life couldn't have evolved if it wasn't pretty stable temperature. So whatever's causing the temperature, it had to be pretty stable for hundreds of millions of years, if not billions of years. So the game's over. There's no way nuclear could do that, because you'd have to have a constant new fueling source. You'd have to have somebody putting new uranium into the center of the Earth. I mean, it's such an obviously stupid theory. I mean, the fact that nobody thinks about any of this stuff or talks about it. How can I be the only person on this planet who's realized, well, 1/2 mv squared doesn't work in space, it doesn't work with levers, it doesn't work with a ballistic pendulum, it doesn't work with a power generator, it doesn't work with a power drill, it doesn't work with car crashes, it doesn't work anywhere. How can I be the only one who's observed this obvious fact? I mean, you're just sitting there saying, how can it be possible that all you people just fall for stuff they tell you and you believe? They tell you it takes 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. And you just believe it. Why? Why do you believe it? Have they shown you? No. You just believe. I mean, this gravity argument is just so obvious, and I didn't give it much consideration because I was focused on energy and photons. I really wasn't focused on the subject of gravity. But this is just so obvious that it's just, come on, how can they get away with this? How can they get away with saying Ben Space done it? It just can't have done it. It's pretty profound, not going to lie. Yes, it's you know, but it's impossible to understand, you know, how all these intelligent people could be, you know, especially when you point out the obvious, and they still deny. You know, they still say, no, it has to be right. And you're like, no, you've never seen something going, you know, something going 5 times as fast requiring 25 times the fuel. You've never seen that happen. You've never seen an electric turbine at the Niagara Falls spin 3 times as fast and make 9 times the electricity. You never saw any of that happen. So why do you believe? Channel membership. No, I've never considered doing anything that would assume my audience is a moron. So I have a donate button on my website, because if people are smart and they say, oh, I like to help contribute, they can do it nice and efficiently and they only lose 3% of their money. Now, if I use Patreon, then they lose 7% of their money. So I'm supposed to assume they're so stupid that they want to throw away 7% of their money? And, you know, why would I oblige somebody to be a member of something? You either like the videos and you watch them or you don't. Why should I oblige you to do some kind of antics, you know, bounce up and down in your chair to, you know, to see the video? Well, why should I bother with any of that crap? Just assumes my audience is an idiot. I'm not a member of anybody's channel. I'm not, you know, why the hell would I want to be? I just want to hear arguments. I want to see science. I don't give a shit about anything else. I don't want to buy a teacup. Fuck you people. I can find one in the garbage. I got this little happy grandpa one. My grandpa. Yeah, that's some God thing written on this other side. It's free in the garbage. Yeah. That's where I get my mugs from. I ain't gonna buy one that says some stupid shit no one's gonna read. Oh, God. Gravity being a time-dependent force was obvious to me. Yes, I mean, it's just so obvious. It's right in the formula, right? I mean, it's not like it's trickily obvious. It's so obvious. I mean, it's just plainly stated, 9.8 meters per second per 1 second. Was kind of surprised that science determines the force based on distance. Yes, it's just insensible. And especially when you know, like, you got your first unit of gravity, and you know that if I turn the gravity off, so I put you in gravity for 1 second, you move 4.8 meters. That's how far you got. And you know you have 9.8 meters of velocity. Now, if I turn the gravity off entirely, you're still going 9.8. And in the next second, you're going to go 9.8. That means you're going to go twice as far as you went when you were getting gravity. When gravity was applying the force, you only got 4.8. And now you're getting 2 units of 4.8. And no, there's no extra force of gravity. So you know right away that, oh, that's just the velocity I've already accrued. That's what the force already gave me. That's momentum I already have. I'm not going to get any extra moving this distance. I'm only going to get extra when I have that 1 more second and I get 1 more 4.9. All gravity adds, I could be going 500 miles an hour, and all gravity is going to add is the 4.9 meters of distance in 1 second. That's all it's ever going to add. It can't add any more than that. Your accrued velocity is what adds all the other distance. That's free. Okay? What you've already gained is all free. All right, it's just amazing. Amazing. I mean, it's amazing that people just can't be fair to these facts and recognize, yes, 2 units of time can only be 2 units of gravitational force. That's all I can get is 2 units. And it perfectly works in the sense that 2 units of time, I'll have twice the speed. So, yeah, it perfectly makes sense. Twice the speed, twice the time. I'll obviously have twice the weight, which is I'll have twice the momentum. That's it. There's no 4s anywhere. Yes, I traveled 4 units of distance, but it's irrelevant because it was only 2 units of time. I was only in the paint spray 2 units of time. I mean, it's just so obvious. And to spend years making these obvious arguments, you're just saying this is just so corrupt. How could humans be this dishonest? I mean, part of the problem is yes, YouTube won't expose me to an audience. They won't give me enough of a random new audience to ever get to anybody who matters. Anybody who is a real physicist, maybe makes videos and says, you know what, this is a good point, I ought to bring it up in my videos, that yeah, this is a sort of unresolved. We really haven't proven 1/2 mv squared, or we really haven't proven bent space can make free energy. And they certainly haven't proven that anything's interfering or entangled or superimposed. All of those concepts are really silly. Alright, so maybe that's enough. And such. I could probably do a bit more, but, you know, it does seem we're choking to death. You know, running out of, whatever, interactive energy. So, yeah, that'll have to do. And so I'll retitle this something, throw gravity in here somewhere, I guess, and bent space maybe, and blah, 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 and we'll see if we get any arguments from anybody attempting to be reasonable and say something on the subject, but probably isn't going to happen. Because it hasn't happened so far. Just can't get people to stay on the subject. It's just an absolute fact. Again, the fact that they are not responding to is the fact that the bent space-time geodesic creates real momentum, and you don't have any explanation for where that real momentum goes, and it can't go to disappearia. It can't go to I no longer existia. It has to go into some form of motion that is durable and still active in the universe. Alright, so explain that. And such. Alright, so yeah, we'll end here. So thank you, participants. You did fairly well. I appreciate it. So what is this life? You did good. And Luke, you did good. And the rest of you didn't do so well. I mean, Dark Endless is, you know, a long-time listener, so he's always doing good, trying, and such. So, this is the button I need. All right, so till the next time and such.